one of the things that I want you to know is that right off the bat is that this is a Facebook Live, so it's a public forum. Sometimes people are a little surprised because we sort of get into some very deep and personal issues on this Facebook Live, and it sort of feels like we're having a private conversation, but do realize that it's not private. It is a public forum, and this video is being recorded on top of that, and it will be posted to YouTube as well. So you're welcome to make comments, absolutely, and but just be aware that others may see these comments or even notice that you're on the live. It looks like there's 4 people watching right now, and could you just let me know if you can hear me? And if you can't, then I'll have to do something else to make sure this works. I don't see any comments just yet. So I'm just going to assume that you can hear me until somebody says, wait a minute, you've been talking on for 20 minutes and there isn't anything. I can't hear a word you're saying. Oh, good. Finally, yeah, a couple people saying thanks. Oh, thank you very much for letting me know that you can hear me. I appreciate it. I try to use my AirPods just because they seem to do better sound than when I'm just talking into my laptop. So that's the reason I ask about this. So, you know, today's subject is kind of based on an event or whatever. I'm not sure what to call it. March or April tends to be the month that has been set aside to celebrate neurodiversity. And the purpose behind this celebration, it started a few years back. It was Autism Awareness Day developed by the UN, and then a young woman decided to switch that from autism awareness to celebrate neurodiversity, which I think does have a lot of value. The idea is to be aware and that being a neurodiverse person has its blessings as well as some of the liabilities and burdens, but the idea is to be respectful of people on the spectrum. But you know what this group is about is looking at how neurodiversity intersects with the neurotypical life, and in particular in intimate relationships and family relationships where you've got somebody who's on the autism spectrum and somebody who's neurotypical. And those interactions I refer to as neurodivergent. So I can't imagine celebrating neurodiversity without talking about how much of a struggle it is to be in these relationships. They can be highly rewarding, obviously. You can love people and have benefits in those relationships, but they are also very stressful, and that's what this group is about. So what I'm going to be talking about is how to navigate these neurodivergent relationships. And by the way, remember that when I say neurodivergent, what I mean, I'm using the term to mean that there's a neurodiverse person and a neurotypical person in a relationship, or several in a family, and together they produce neurodivergence. They often feel like they're just pulling apart, sometimes pulling each other apart, sometimes pulling the relationship apart. So I think it's important to get the terminology right. Neurodivergence means it's coming apart. And it happens because those systems are very, very different brain organization systems. Neurotypicals process information and even talk differently than people on the spectrum. And we're aware of that. We feel it. We feel it. So if you're going to navigate your neurodivergent relationship with some neurodiversity awareness, we need some neurotypical awareness too. We need the whole package. Can't just do a piece of it. Otherwise, life is just not linear, is it? So, go ahead and post your comments if you want to have questions too, by the way. Even if I veer off the subject, it doesn't matter. The subject is still the same. And so what I'm going to do first is not just talk about the challenges that we face in these relationships, but that there's a lot of loneliness that comes with it. So, what I wrote in the header here is in this Facebook Live, we'll talk about navigating neurodivergent relationships, the challenges we face, enhanced by our alienation and feeling of intense loneliness can leave us feeling bereft and alone. There's a lot of grieving that goes on. We'll talk about how to survive the loneliness we feel in our relationships and how talking about our pain helps us become stronger. Lastly, we'll talk about the ultimate relationship challenge we face: divorce, separation, or alone together. Now, what's interesting is people think, well, gosh, that's pretty heavy duty stuff. But if we don't talk about the pain, if we don't talk about where things could go wrong, then we don't know how to work to make it better. I'm not saying that you just roll around in what's wrong, but we need to be realistic that these are very tough relationships. They're not easy for anybody, not a soul. And when we start understanding why they're not so easy, we actually have some solutions that might work. So, we're talking about loneliness, we're talking about the devastating outcome that some people have to live with. But it's not that we can't find a way to rise above. I always call it the tidal wave. To rise above the tidal wave that washes over us, and we're tempted to be, caught in that tidal wave and smashed on the rocks of life. And instead, we could fly up out of that tidal wave and learn how to take better care of ourselves. So let me let you know what's happening this month for our support group. I've got 2 support groups, and I put the links to them in the Facebook Live announcement. One is with Meetup. You can join Meetup, and you can go to these events through your Meetup membership. The other one is the Advanced Community Forum, and that's where you can also attend these events, but you also have access to past recordings from many, many years of events, teleconferences, video conferences, not just the YouTubes, but our private events are all stored there. And you can go into that advanced community and talk with each other about what you're learning or the support you might need. So, and if you have more questions about that, I can explain it. And I noticed that Julie's here. She says, hi. Julie is our ambassador, and she is a great person to ask questions of. She's been in our group for many, many years, so she knows it from personally living with a neurodivergent family and also being in our group. She's good at helping people find their way around all the resources that we offer. So the first conference is a video conference, and video conferences are relatively small. I don't record all of them. I record some, but I don't record the video portion, just the audio. And that's stored, like I said, privately at the Advanced Community Forum. So the first video conference is titled, My Aspie is Such a Robot. I hear this a lot from people, and I don't want to offend people on the spectrum who might be listening today, but I know that you've also heard that. And it's primarily because because of the communication differences, the style in the brain. When someone on the spectrum, they're not using all of the contextual clues to talk with you. They are just being transactional. They're answering questions or asking questions. They're looking for what is the topic. They're not necessarily listening to the person. So sometimes they can come off a bit cool or robotic. So we'll talk more about that. The next conference for the month is the teleconference, and the title is Separation or Alone Together. So the teleconference is an event where all you have to do is dial in and listen. Sometimes we have 50, 100 people on the call. It's a little bit easier to record that than it is a video call where you've got all these people attending. But the idea is that you also get a chance to get into the queue and ask questions of me or give a comment or a tip. Sometimes people have just read a great new book that they want to share with other people, and it's fine to do that. So this topic is separation or alone together. So part of the problem of the devastation that neurotypicals feel in a neurodivergent relationship is it becomes so emotionally unbearable that we begin thinking about, how do I get out of this? How do I get away? So one way to get away is to separate or divorce. Another way to get away is to shut yourself down. Neither one of those options is good. I mean, it could be that you need a separation or a divorce, but shutting yourself down is not okay. So we'll be talking about other ways to take your life back. Then the third event for the month, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, I offer the video conferences more than once each month. Each topic, at least there's 2 events on with that topic. So like My Ask Me Such a Robot, I'm offering it on April 4th and April 5th. One time it's 4 o'clock, one time it's at 9 o'clock in the morning, Pacific time, so we can try to meet most everybody's time zone issues. And the teleconference is offered just once, but it is also recorded and stored at the Advanced Community Forum. So the idea is that if a topic is particularly important to the members of the group and you can't get in to an event, I'll offer it again a third time in the month. I have a bonus conference that I usually oh, Nancy says I'm not loud enough. I've got the speaker on as loud as I can go, Nancy. I'm sorry. I'm hoping that people can hear me. Sometimes it's about your own technology, by the way. So look at your own phone, laptop, whatever you're using. Click the speaker volume. Mine's at the top of my screen, and see if it got knocked down a peg or 2. Otherwise, it's being recorded, and so far the recordings have come out pretty good quality, so you can probably hear it there. Okay, so where was I? Got distracted there a little bit. The idea is that there's always a place for you to go and talk and get support. So if you want to hear another topic again, email me or post a notice here, and I'll be sure to put it on the schedule, if I have time, because I'm working around my own clinical schedule too. Okay, the third video conference is Surviving the Loneliness, and again, it's offered on 2 different dates, April 12th and April 13th. These are posted, by the way, on our meetup calendar, so you can find the dates easily, or you can just Google. If you Google me and this topic, it's at the top of the page, because there's not too many of me out there doing this work. So, surviving the loneliness. It's really important that you understand that when you're in a neurodivergent relationship, if you're neurotypical, you often feel quite lonely because your neurodiverse loved one is using a style of communicating that doesn't necessarily speak to you. They're not always affirming you. What they're doing is talking about the subject or trying to understand what you want, but that's not the same as affirming you, noticing you, supporting you. And so we feel lonely. Neurotypicals feel quite lonely in these relationships, or if you don't feel lonely, you feel disconnected over and over and over again. Because remember, the purpose of a transactional person is to nail it down, get to an answer, fix something. But the purpose of conversation for a neurotypical is to open up the relationship, to make connections, to keep the connections going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's what empathy is. Empathy is the ability to keep the connection alive in the moment. In fact, it's often something that neurotypicals will say to their autistic loved ones is, I wish you could be more present. When we say that, when we say we wish that you could be more present, what we're saying to you neurodiverse people is, can you just notice me, not only what I'm saying? Acknowledge me, not just what I'm saying. Easier said than done if you're on the spectrum. Okay, and then the last video conference that I'm offering for the month is it Aspie bashing to talk about our pain? And that again is offered twice. We've got another conference scheduled that I list as bonus because we haven't decided which one's the most popular to add in there. So is it Aspie bashing to talk about our pain? So let me say something really quickly. The term Aspie is not pejorative. It is a term that was developed by people on the spectrum. All right? Neurotypicals didn't come up with that term. Spectrum people began calling themselves Aspies. Now there's lots of other terms, and that one is an older one. But Aspie bashing, is it Aspie bashing to talk about our pain? No, it's not, for heaven's sake. If we're celebrating neurodiversity, then it should be okay to talk about how neurodiversity affects us too. So, talking about your pain doesn't mean that you're, well, we might complain. We might complain, we might be unhappy about how, what people are saying and doing and so forth. But the idea is that when we talk about our pain, what we're doing is identifying that there's something going on here and that we're trying to get to the bottom of it. So what neurotypicals do, by the way, is we talk about a problem as a way of inviting the other person in to solve it with us. The problem is that people on the spectrum will hear that negativity and think they're being complained about, as opposed to, no, I just want to talk about that there's a misunderstanding here, right? That's what we do. Neurotypicals bring something up that's a problem as an invitation to talk. So, there's different ways that we present this stuff. And I want to let you know, since Julie's here today, that she offers a couple of groups. One is a group for people in New Zealand or in that time zone, because that's where she lives. Excuse me. So, and that's a free Zoom call for meetup members and for our advanced community forum as well. And what it's about is anything you want to talk about. She's trying to just be available to people in her, her part of the world and her time zone. But you don't have to be in New Zealand to attend. You can just be a member of our groups, one of our groups or both groups, and join the call and just talk to other members who are, sharing this lifestyle. Then I think another really important group that Julie runs is our new member orientation meeting, Ask an Ambassador Your Question meeting. So Julie, the new members often will join these groups and kind of get confused about, where do I start? What do I sign up for first? And so Julie can answer all those questions and kind of give you tips about how to get around the technology, because as you can imagine, these platforms have some interesting problems at times for us to use them effectively. They're not quite the same as meeting in a group somewhere or meeting for lunch and talking, or a private space. But so if you get stuck, I would attend one of Julie's new member orientation meetings. And by the way, that's all of these events are posted on our calendar. They're on the calendar in the Advanced Community Forum, where all the recordings are stored. They're also on the calendar in our meetup group. Now, the meetup group, I think of it as a sort of a starting place. It's like if you're just beginning to ask questions about how do I work with my neurodivergent lifestyle, then the meetup group is probably a good place to start because you can just sort of sample events. You can get involved little by little that way. The advanced community forum is where you really dig in deeper, and you're talking, you're asking questions, you're talking to each other, sort of like you might do at one of Julie's meetings, but it's in the forum, it's on the online forum. Another link I didn't put down there, but if you go to the advanced community forum, you're going to find that I have an online recorded course that you can also sign up for. The course is recorded, it's videos, and I'm walking you through everything I know about how neurodivergence works and doesn't work and what you can do about it. And the course is for both neurotypicals and the neurodiverse. So you can take it with your loved ones, or you don't have to. You can just be neurodiverse and take the course, or you can just be neurotypical and take the course. And there's a separate community for that, for course participants as well, where you can go in and talk to each other people in these relationships, not just neurotypicals. So the meetup group and the advanced community forum are just for neurotypicals, but the course and that forum are for both. And I think it's a different experience to go in and be taking a course with a mixture, of neurodiverse and neurotypicals. I think we learn a lot from each other. I think I covered all the basics, and I was just looking to see if there's any questions that people have for me on any of these subjects, and I don't see anything just yet, but feel free to post something. Anything you'd like to know about that is on this subject, or you're wondering, how am I supposed to get past the loneliness? I guess I can talk about that too, because I think that's really tough. I've had to struggle with that loneliness for so many years because I grew up with an autistic parent. So I started off with, and I'm neurotypical, I started off with a mother on the spectrum who never made me feel like she got me. I knew she loved me. I knew that she wanted to take care of me. She cooked terrific food. She made my clothes. She sewed the clothes. She had a compost pile in the backyard. She did all the Earth Mother things. But I didn't laugh with my mother. She didn't enjoy activities with me. She was an adult, not the mother that would play with her child. My father played with me. My father was fun, but he was neurotypical. So the loneliness factor is, we need affirmation from others to know we exist and that we're okay. It doesn't mean that you need to be told that you're okay. It means that we are noticed. We're listened to, right? And with your children, for example, you want them to know that you heard what they said or the question they had. Even if they ask something dumb, you still want to listen, right? Because it's not dumb to them. It's something they want to know. So Nancy says, please talk about how MD think we are criticizing, I think is what you meant. Yes, this is a common one that people feel a lot, that we are criticizing them when we bring up a problem. Remember, they're transactional, so when we bring up a problem, they think we're asking them to fix it. And really what we're asking them is to work with us to come up with an answer that works for both of us. We might want them to do something differently. We might say, gee, I wish you could say it this way, or I wish you could take care of this by this afternoon. But we're not necessarily telling them they're bad because they didn't do something. So the problem is that it's a mistake in their processing of the question that they think we're criticizing. In addition, if you have grown up neurodiverse, you've had probably a lot of encounter, especially the very bright, high functioning people on the spectrum, have had a lot of experiences with people not understanding you or criticizing you for not catching things quickly enough or doing things in an odd way or having a special interest that is a little goofy. So dealing with criticism from others or rolled eyeballs and things like that, I get why people on the spectrum can feel bad. But at the same time, what spectrum people are doing is taking your offer to talk, opening up a conversation. They're trying to shut it down by saying, well, I already took care of that. Or why are you asking me to do that? That's not something I normally do. Or whatever they do, they're not getting that you're inviting them into your world. And we can talk more about that if you have more questions. And Julie says, the loneliness is so hard. Not being seen is overwhelming and so hard on self-esteem. Right. What she means by that is that, like on this call, I'm talking to you, but all I see is a little picture and a name. I'm imagining the person that I'm talking to, because we neurotypicals want to interact. I want to hear what Julie has to say and Nancy has to say, and the look on their faces. We're acknowledging the other person before we acknowledge what they say. It's really important. We want to affirm that the person who's talking to me or listening to me is important to stay connected with. So we are wired for connection. Desmond Tutu, Archbishop in South Africa, who is no longer living, but he was a Nobel Peace Prize winner too. And he said, we were made for each other. He said, we human beings were made for each other. That's true. This is true for neurodiverse people as it is for neurotypicals. It's just that neurodiverse people don't give us that message. They don't say, you were made for me. I need to know you're here. I care about you. I want to know what you're thinking. So when we feel that disconnect because they go transactional on us, it's shocking. It feels as if we're not going to survive. I mean, it's not needy, by the way. I want to remind you, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with our survival on the planet as human beings. We survived, okay, because we're social, because we connect with others. That's what Margaret Mead said when she picked up the prehistoric fossilized femur. I think it was a femur, human femur, and somebody asked her, what was the beginning of civilization? And she picked up the femur and she said this, and she showed that bone had broken. It had been broken, but it had healed. And this prehistoric person was able to heal because people took care of him or her. They took care of that ailing person. They got the bone to go back together. They pushed it together, probably made some kind of a prehistoric cast. They fed the person. They kept them warm. They survived. She said that's evidence of civilization. So we were designed a long time ago to be there for each other, to notice each other, to affirm each other, and there's survival value in that. So when our neurodiverse loved ones disconnect us, when they don't always, when they walk out of the room, or they don't hear what you had to say, we momentarily have a sense that we're not safe, right? So in order to combat this, loneliness, this desire to get away from the person who's making us feel disconnected, that's based on survival skills that it's not just skills, but the way we're wired. And trust me, people on the spectrum need to survive too, and they want to be connected with as well. They're just not good listeners to you. They're listening to the subject. So Julie's right about this. It's hard on your self-esteem. If you're not acknowledged for just being there, just being this wonderful person that I'm in love with, if you're not acknowledged, then sometimes you wonder, am I okay? Am I good enough? And in my case, growing up with an autistic mother, I never felt like I was good enough for her. I felt like I was good enough for my father, so it was helpful that he was a very, very devoted, involved father. So thank goodness. But still, I had this other message that sort of hung over me like a cloud for a long time. And it's probably why I had to get a Ph.D. You know how that is. If you don't feel good about yourself, you keep getting more and more degrees. So how about anybody else? Another question there? Just want to make sure I'm not missing somebody. I'm looking through them, scrolling through the messages here. So the way we take care of ourselves is to better there's two parts to this. One is you've got to understand how neurodiverse people think, because they're not as good at understanding how we think. They can be walked through it. All right, they can be walked through it. In fact, I was doing that this morning with one of my clients. It was just delightful. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But if we understand that they're transactional and that they're focusing on your words, not you, we can gently nudge them back. When they say things like, I thought we already decided this, why are you bringing it up again? You know, we bring things up over and over again because we're reconnecting. That's all we're doing. We're reconnecting. And we can say, well, yeah, of course we decided this, but I thought, there's one more thing I kind of wanted to talk about. And then he or she rolls their eyes and says, there's always one more thing you need to talk about. There's always one more thing. And we're never done. Can we be done? And, but if you laugh about it, if you joke with them, if you say, look, there's more to a relationship than an agenda, a checklist, right? They might hang in there with you. So what I was going to tell you about this man this morning, he's on the spectrum, and he was having a hard time understanding why his wife was annoyed with him. She's neurotypical. She wanted him to tell her how the meeting went with the financial planner, right? How'd that meeting go? And he said, well, if you want to know, call him up. And then he said something like, if you want to know what's going on in the for our financial plan, you can make your own appointment. So I walked him through this. I said, well, that's true. That's very transactional, isn't it? It's abrupt, and it cut her off. And I said, so it's okay. It's just not very kind. And I said, so yes, she could call the financial planner and get information about your financial position, but she was asking you because she wants to engage with you on that subject. She wants to engage with you, not the financial planner. And this man, I said, I looked at him and I was going to explain the next part. He's on the spectrum. He said, oh, so it's like I'm pushing her away when I tell her to go call the planner. And I said, yeah, and that doesn't feel good. So he got it. He offered that to me. I didn't tell him. So I know that people on the spectrum can start putting those pieces together. Doesn't mean they're going to be as sophisticated as you are at noticing the person. And Lynette, she says, in addition to feeling lonely, also feel, I think you also feel diminished, even now after 50 years of marriage, have to reach out to others to survive. Yes, oh, thank you for reminding me of that important point. It's, yes, if you're ignored, if those needs to be acknowledged are not taken care of, then your self-esteem goes down, you feel invisible, you feel small, you feel like, well, my part in this relationship is not very significant or important to my spouse. And so what Lynette does is reach out to others who do acknowledge her, who are aware of her value, who want to hear what she has to say. And we need enough of that to keep us going. But it's important to get it that your spouse doesn't, unless they're a narcissist, of course, but people on the spectrum don't realize they're rejecting you. They think they're just answering your question. Like if you want to know more about our financial plan, call the planner. Seems efficient to that neurodiverse person. It's just unkind. So what Lynette is suggesting is that we need to make sure we have plenty of loving, attentive people around that notice who you are, not just what you're talking about, right? Notice who the human being is. As Desmond Tutu said, we were meant for each other. Our identities are based on engaging with others. So, by the way, if you are listening to this after the recording has stopped and you have questions, not a problem. You can post your question here on Facebook or send me a message through Messenger. I'll answer that. The other thing is you can also post your messages on YouTube, because it'll be posted to YouTube as well. And I occasionally get a question from YouTube viewers. And I sure hope you join our community, because you'll learn what I'm talking about, but other people are living this life too. And as you'll find, it doesn't matter whether you live in Denmark or South Africa or Dubai or Florida. The patterns are the same. Neurotypicals talk about the loneliness frequently. They talk about feeling diminished, like Lynette talked about. And the neurodiverse population often says, I just wish my neurotypical partner would be nice to me. They're looking at, they don't really totally get the connecting piece, but they do pick up that you're upset. And they're always saying, I wish that that other person could be nice to me. So if we're going to get the nice to me stuff together with affirming me stuff, we need to build what I call an interface protocol. And that's something I talk about in my course and in my new book. Oh, by the way, I don't think I mentioned the book. The new book is, what is it called? Empathy is More Than Words. Empathy is More Than Words. It's on Amazon. And I outline a lot of these things we're talking about lately in the book. It's the latest up-to-date stuff. Debbie, I just lost my dad, and my husband hasn't offered me any comfort, really. In fact, he's been avoiding the whole family. Yes. That's a tough one, isn't it, Debbie? What she's talking about is he doesn't know how to comfort. He's transactional, so he does things. He might go out and wash out the garbage can so it's fresh for the spring, or put oil in the car, but he doesn't know how to just say, honey, I'm so sorry. So he can learn in therapy how to be more available. But does it make sense? They're transactional, and it makes them anxious to have to navigate the emotional content of other people's lives. So, for example, one story I tell quite a bit is where a woman was going through breast cancer, and she survived. Maybe she's probably got 10 years by now, cancer-free. But she was going through cancer treatments at the time, and she never once did her spouse go with her to her treatments or to her appointments. And it felt bad because she wanted his moral support. But her autistic spouse instead busied himself in the backyard building her a water feature so that she could sit and hear the water and watch the waterfall and see the water plants. So he did something for her, but he never talked with her about how she felt. or went with her for these scary appointments. So I think that we can ask for a hug and they're likely to do it. We can say, I know this is tough for you to have to hear me cry or be sad every day because I just lost my dad. But I'll get better. And I'll get better if you just hold me. Sit with me. You can give them instructions. Ellen, one aspect of relationships I miss is friendship with other couples. Oh, could you please comment on this? Thanks, Ellen. That's a tough one, isn't it? Because other people are not very tolerant of the confusing mixed messages that come out of our relationship. Many people in our group experience that they may invite somebody over once and they don't get invited back because they don't know how to relate to the confusing mix of neurodivergent communication. I was just noticing that people are commenting about Debbie's loss and offering her support, and that's so sweet, right? That's what we do. So, back to Ellen though. Yeah, one of the things that's nice for a lot of people, and they don't really realize it, is how much you'll see other couples doing things together, and one wife is talking to the other person's husband or to their kids, and it's okay, there's this camaraderie, and you're not going to have that as much in a neurodivergent relationship. And it doesn't make sense that, I'm sorry for all you neurodiverse folks who are listening, but it's hard for most neurotypicals who are not in these relationships to watch the clumsy way neurodiverse people interact socially. They just judge it as poor behavior. So, once again, I think the way we cope with that is to, find people that do get us, that share the moment, or even find your neurodiverse loved one, entertaining. That they may be okay with the quirky sense of humor. And if you, we were just talking about this in our group this week, if you don't make excuses for your neurodiverse person, I think it's better. Because they're going to say kind of awkward things or pick up the wrong part of the conversation because they're context blind. And if you just hold back and say to yourself, well, that's just what they do. That's how they behave. It's going to be easier than if you try to jump in and help them be more neurotypical, because it's not going to work anyway and you're going to wear yourself out. So does anybody have any questions about the groups, or what we get from the groups, or what you're going to get by joining the group? Because I can answer that too, but you can also go to those links and learn all about it. And I'm happy to also take suggestions. Sometimes people have an idea for a topic that they'd like to hear. And I also write blogs. So I've probably written about every topic that we could think of, and then somebody comes up with something new that I hadn't ever thought of. So make sure you send me some suggestions too. I'm happy to listen. Okay, I'm scrolling back to make sure I didn't miss somebody. No, I think I got to every question so far, so feel free to post, or and I'm going to wrap this up in just a few minutes, but I'm really pretty excited about our new advanced community forum, because more and more, and the course, the online course especially, because the course is for couples. or not. You don't have to be in a relationship, but it's for both neurodiverse and neurotypical. So you get to do this with somebody else, not just a neurotypical, but you get to be engaged with other neurodiverse people who are trying to learn how to do this differently. And neurodiverse people are listening and hearing what's going on with the neurotypical. Well, I think that's probably why this one husband was able to say that he noticed, the one I was talking to about the financial planner, he says, oh, it's like I'm pushing her away. I'm not sure he would have got that had he not taken the course and paid more attention to what was going on to other neurotypicals. Well, that's about all I have to talk about today, unless you've got more questions. Anybody else have something else they want? I don't see it. Okay. I keep seeing it blips a little bit. Nope. Okay. Please go to YouTube and you'll be able to see all the past Facebook Lives. It'll be posted under Dr. Kathy's office hours. That's another name for it. And like I said, if you join the groups, you'll be able to talk live to other people live either in the video call or live on a forum, interactive, so that you can learn from each other. You are not alone, not anymore. This is where you can come and get the support you need. Okay, take care, everybody. I hope to hear from you.